Yes, the people know, our friends know that I'm going to be going on a trip. Okay. I was just looking at my desk and I have this little bear sitting. So, yes, reminder. I will not be here after today. I will not be here for 2 weeks. Um, and I'll put it in the schedule. Um, I kind of wanted to do, I really did want to do something for you guys, sort of while I'm gone. I might still do it. We'll see. But I'm going to say, don't hold your breath. Don't put any money on it because, I only have a few days. I still have to finish packing and, there's all the things. So yeah, but I will be taking pictures. I will be, I don't know, collecting information to share with you guys about my trip. All of the great thing about this trip is it is a tour, and it was put together by a friend who is actually a friend of my mom's and mine. We met her through the world of textiles and quilting, and we've known her, oh gosh, probably 15 years or so. The most fun person. She's so creative. She's so much fun. And ironically, she's not really part of necessarily like the quilt and quilt history world like I am. She's a little bit more like sewing and fashion. But ironically, she lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm such an idiot. I have yet to check and see if my friends in Lincoln who are, AQSG and International Quilt Museum and all that, if they know any of the people going on my tour, because a bunch of them are from Nebraska. So anyway, it's funny. But yeah, so there's the fabric component of this, and I will be going to Festival of Quilts in Birmingham. But the rest of it is more like fashion kind of stuff. We're going to go to Liberty of London and the mills and things like that. So aside from the one day, you probably won't see a whole lot of quilts, but definitely getting lots of intel. And you guys, the Chintz book and the Heritage of Cotton, all the stuff we read about in these, I get to go to the actual places or very nearby. So there's a number of museums I would love to go to, but and it is possible. I mean, this is like one of those like kind of, it's a highly structured tour, but it's also loosey-goosey in the fact that if you want to go do your own thing, that's totally fine. Like you're not chained to these other people. I would love to go to the American Museum. I really want to go to the V&A. It's not on the tour. So the V&A is its own trip in itself. So, but anyway, I am hoping to get lots of fun pictures and things when we see the mill type stuff. So also get to see Stonehenge. This is terrible. I'm not much of a touristy person. Like when I travel, and I haven't done a whole lot of, overseas travel, but when I have gone to places, in Mexico or, when I went to Eastern Europe a number of years back, and, it's kind of fun to sort of travel outside of the beaten path, the tourist areas. Obviously, in English-speaking countries, not a problem at all. When I did that in the Czech Republic, I got a little scared. The people I was traveling with were doing something that day that I didn't want to do, and so I was like, no big deal. This is a free day. I'll go out and do my own thing, and I did. And I walked, and I went to a couple museums and things, and then I realized like it was starting to get dark. It was in the spring, so it was still getting dark early spring. And I got to a place where I was like, oh, it's kind of getting dark and I'm going to have this like really long walk back to the hotel, or I could get on public transportation. Yeah, I don't know about today. Today might be an entirely different story because this was, oh gosh. It's probably been going on, it's been like 18 years, I guess, since I took that trip. At the time, they did not have any English signage in, like, the public transportation. So I was like, yeah, Stephanie's going to be walking because, and thank goodness, like I kind of knew like the direction to go in, and like, most of these old European cities, with the exception of Paris, are grids, and it's not that difficult. But yeah, that was one of my travel adventures where I'm like, yeah, let's not replicate that again. Because I was like, I think I learned 2 Czech words while I was there. Anyway, enough about my trip. I will come back with lots of fun stuff. So we'll do at least 1 or 2 streams of UK debrief. Hopefully I'll get lots of good pictures at Festival of Quilts though. So that'll be probably one whole stream. So that. Also, this weekend, Saturday is a Stitch and Glitch with Quilt Nerding. So hopefully, if you don't have anything going on Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, you'll join Jill and me over on the Quilt Nerding YouTube. And, oh yeah, Robin, for sure. My souvenir budget, very tiny. And Jill has already demanded a gift. So, but yeah, I will collect as much fun things as I can. And this is funny, you guys, I did a foreign currency order just because, like, when I went to Eastern Europe at the time, the exchange rate was really, really good. And it's some of the other countries in Europe that I went to were already on the euro. The European Union, was well underway. So like when I went to Austria, I was without euros, and of course you have to, like, most of the bathrooms in Europe require a coin. What you do is you put the coin in, you go to the bathroom, you come out, it gives it back to you, just like the shopping carts at Aldi. So that's a European thing. So yeah, I'm like, oh no, all I have in my pocket was US coins and Czech kroner, and none of that works in Austria or, where else did I go? Poland. So anyway, long story short, I was like, I'm going to do a small currency order because the exchange rates are usually better through your bank versus going there and doing it in, outside of customs at the airport or at the hotel or stuff. So I went ahead and did that, and I went to pick it up, and I was like, I don't have a whole lot of money in the bank, so I'm only going to get a small amount, and it's really just for tips. The small tips, like your motor coach driver and the tour guide and all that kind of stuff. Everything else is like cashless. And I went and ordered it, and I got it, and of course I had to pay fees, and the dollar against British sterling not good right now, and so I had to pay more in dollars, and all the things. So I come out and they give me my envelope, I sign for everything, I come home and I open it, and I'm like, there's like, and I asked for small bills, of course, because this is for tips, and I'm like, there's like 7 bills in here. It was like 2 20s, a couple 10s, and some 5s. I'm like, oh, this is so sad. Anyway, so yeah, it's been, and because I haven't traveled internationally in a really long time, it's like a lot of stuff has changed, and yeah, I like the visa process has changed, at least for the UK, and all that stuff. So anyway, yeah. My foreign excursions, I'm sure you guys are gonna have lots of great stories when I come back. So today, I said the other day that possibly look at Louise Bourgeois today, and we indeed are. I've looked at a lot of her work over the years, and I'll be honest, some of her work I do not like. I just, like, visually it does not appeal to me, because it's ugly. It's kind of disconcerting, and I think that's part of her purpose there, so it's not like I'm responding to it in a way that she didn't intend. Also, she does some stuff with spiders, and I have a terrible arachnophobia, so I do not love the spiders that she does. But it's the spider, I think, is a mother. It's supposed to be like a motherly symbol, so we'll see. But I really don't know a lot about her personally, so This is going to be education for both of us, all of us, both of us. I think of you guys as like one big entity. You're all one big person. Not true. I love you all. I love you all individually. Anyway, so we're going to look at Louise Bourgeois. I'm going to read the little biography because I think this book has such good little biographies on these women. And then I took a bunch of pictures out of my copy of The Woven Child, which has a lot of her fiber stuff. It's a really good book. And I can't remember. So The Woven Child is a series. And I really do need to read this book because it's mostly pictures. So the narrative, the essays are really short. So I'm going to add that to my homework eventually. So we're going to look at those pictures. And then if we have time, I have some other stuff pulled up. And then, of course, we keep reading on The Secret of the Crazy Quilt. So let's get started with Louise Bourgeois. So I put a content warning in the title of this stream simply because the topics that she created, her work is around, a lot of the textile work is around body parts, sexuality, although it's not overt. But childbirth, there are images of baby coming out of a woman. And so I don't think that's an 18 plus topic, but because I have gotten mildly censored here, I put it in the title. We're going to see a fabric childbirth picture. So cover your eyes if that's a problem. It's art, people. I know you guys understand these things. So let's get started. So first of all, this is the picture of Louise and the spider, one of the spiders. I have a couple of images of the spiders, or at least one. I just don't love them. It's a giant spider. Ugh. People love to send me images, like video of giant spiders. Like, look, they have the spider in Colorado that's sometimes bigger than a tarantula. Like, don't show me this stuff, guys. I will, if I ever saw something like that in my own house, I would crawl out of my skin and then burn the house down. Because that's how much I hate spiders. So before I start reading this, let's pull up a picture of Louise so you don't have to just look at me. So this is a picture of Louise, and these are actually berets, stuffed berets, and as in hat, beret. She is French. But when I saw this picture, I was like, huh, are those like pumpkins, gourds, giant boobs? Like, what is this? So it's just, she just has these interesting sculptures, and we're going to learn why, where her history in cloth comes from, because she's a sculptor. And I don't know, did she start as a painter? Entirely possible. Let's find out. So I'm reading from Women's Work from Feminine Arts to Feminist Art, compiled by Farron Gibson, or Gibson. Gibson? I don't know. Okay. So Louise Bourgeois, she's French, so be prepared for me to have to pronounce some French stuff. It's not going to be pretty. Trigger warning for people that actually speak French. Okay, so Louise Bourgeois, 1911 to 2010, soft sculpture and weaving. Louise Bourgeois could do it all. Although she is best known for her sculptures and installations, she utilized a range of mediums, including painting, drawing, textiles, and printmaking within her art practice. Bourgeois' fabric and soft sculpture work, created in the later stages of her career, explore themes of sexuality, the body, and autobiographical themes from her childhood. And I suspect there's trauma. So, on Christmas Day, 1911, the Bourgeois family received a gift, the birth of their daughter, Louise. She was born on Christmas. Throughout Bourgeois' childhood, the family owned a gallery selling and restoring antique tapestries. Thus, the young Bourgeois was exposed to the art of weaving from an early age. So tapestries, weaving. We're going to see this. She even contributed to the family business by occasionally drawing missing areas from designs. She was especially good at sketching feet. Feet are hard. You think faces are hard? Feet are super hard. Hands and feet, very hard. And that is why it's hard for AI to do hands and feet. That's why there's extra toes, because they're difficult. Extra fingers and toes. She described her mother as sensible and affectionate, but she was often ill and in need of Bourgeois' care. Her father, on the other hand, was passionate, but unfortunately directed that passion towards temperamental outbursts and extramarital affairs, including one with Bourgeois' beloved English tutor. She recalled arguments at the dinner table between her parents when she would distract herself by making sculptures out of bread. The effects of these opposing traits in her parents stayed with Bourgeois and manifested themselves in her work repeatedly. Drawing on her mother's practical nature, Bourgeois first went to the Sorbonne in Paris, so great big famous school in Paris, to study mathematics in 1930. 2 years later, her mother died and she switched her studies to art, attending the École du Louvre, École des Beaux-Arts. At any point, she also worked at the atelier of Cubist artist Fernand Léger, who, after seeing Bourgeois' drawings, promptly declared that she should be a sculptor. Despite his assessment, she continued to produce early works in the mediums of painting and printmaking. So, I mean, I guess, this idea of, the idea of working in fiber at all before mid-century, I think, is completely foreign and alien to the art establishment, because, again, like, these are decorative arts and people were not necessarily doing the kind of stuff she ends up doing, like these sculptures in fabric. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that so many of these women started as painters, especially this this generation of women that were born at the beginning of the 20th century or even earlier. I think by and large they all started as painters, but it does seem like sculpture was a big deal to her. We're gonna find out. So her early works are in the mediums of painting and printmaking, and when she completed her studies, she returned home to open a print shop next to her family's tapestry gallery. It was here that she met her husband, Robert Goldwater, an American art historian, and the couple moved to the United States soon after. From the 1940s, Bourgeois began working in sculpture using the traditional materials of wood and bronze and creating a series of work depicting the human anatomy. These pieces often included interpretations of sexual body parts, such as breasts and genitals, and even fused parts together in unusual and provocative ways. She combined penises and breasts, or might represent one set of genitals in a way that resembled others. For example, her sculpture called Tits in 1967 depicts two conjoined breasts that look like testicles. So I think I don't have any of these images, I don't think. I think for the most part there's kind of some representational type of stuff that I don't think it's completely obvious what it is. She enjoyed the ambiguity of this imagery and the way they juxtaposed contrasting elements. Juxtapose. It's your $1 million word. Her first major work to incorporate softer materials was the 1974 installation Destruction of the Father. Oh, she's not hiding behind metaphors. She's putting it right out there. My father was the son of a bitch, so I'm going to make art that's about the destruction of the father. In this piece, viewers get insight into the trauma she experienced as a child due to her father's behavior. She creates a bizarre dining scene with flesh-colored mounds hanging from the ceiling and protruding from the floor. These breast-like forms are covered in latex, as are the smaller shapes presented on a table, which itself is draped in a skin-like tablecloth. So let me switch her back to me and I'll show you this because I did not take a picture of this. So this is what it looks like. So it's nothing overt, But, knowing what her themes are, you can kind of come to these conclusions, once you know what it's about. And, I mean, again, I think that gives credence to this picture. They are berets, but they also have that boob-like look to them. Okay. The scene is lit with a red light that feels all the more sinister once we consider the story unfolding in the work. Bourgeois explains that it relates to the fantasy of a family becoming fed up with their horrible father, cutting him into pieces and having him for dinner. Yikes. Again, no metaphors there, completely overt. From the 1990s, then in her 80s, Bourgeois began to concentrate on themes related to weaving and her mother. Her work is at times tinged with feelings of sadness or fear, but it's without the anger present in pieces like Destruction of the Father. If she was that good, she could teach AI how to draw them. This was a period when she began her well-known series of spider sculptures. The 1997 Spider Cell depicts a large steel spider standing over a cylindrical cage or cell. The chain-link cell walls evoke the image of a web, with the spider penetrating the top. And this kind of web imagery is going to come up in some quilty stuff in Sans Spider. It's just this sort of webby imagery, which I really like. That's the part I like. The no spider, but the webs are cool. Tapestry panels are contained within, but it is unclear whether the spider is protecting or preying on the contents of the cell. Bourgeois said that spiders, who are nature's weavers, reminded her of her mother, who was a weaver, and who she described in an ode as being as useful as a spider. So spiders are important to me because important to her because they're weavers. And I love that aspect of spider. Is it the goddess Arachne? And also I think, is it Artemis or... I can never keep my Greek and my Roman goddesses, gods and goddesses separated. But, I know that there's that connection between weaving and spiders and all that stuff. But I'm sorry, they just terrify me. They're good for them and their webs, but... Bourgeois' exploration of soft sculptures increased in the latter stages of her career, and this phase is sometimes called her old age style. The bodies and parts that she'd once created from hard materials like stone or bronze were now stitched and stuffed fabric works. The materials bring to mind children's toys, which are frivolous and prone to wear, but her subject matter is decidedly adult and sculptural. In some cases, such as her 2002 sculpture Fragile Goddess, her works are soft reinterpretations of earlier works that she originally produced in bronze. And some of this imagery, you will see it over and over and over again in her drawings and prints, in her soft sculptures, and then later on she kind of brings them into these little pieces that she did. This is a direct challenge to the elevation of traditional sculptural materials above soft materials, which had long been discounted as domestic or diminished because they are less hard-wearing. And then I'll hold this up. You guys actually saw this one the other day. It's this kind of looks like a pregnant body, sort of, or just like a sway-backed sort of body, but it's got this long, weird neck thing and no head. It's a disconcerting, but also interesting. It's an interesting form. Fragile Goddess depicts a nude female figure with large breasts, a curved stomach, and a pert bottom. It simultaneously recalls images of prehistoric Venus sculptures and ancient classical sculptures of goddesses that have lost arms over the centuries. Like some of Bourgeois' earlier sculptures, the shape alludes to both male and female forms. A woman's curvy figure is immediately apparent, but the long neck terminating at the breast is also phallic. So that weird neck thing. I think you see some on these sort of distortions of body parts. I'm starting to understand why they look the way they look. The stitching on the work zigzags across the figure's body as if it had been broken and pieced back together, and connects back to Bourgeois' memories of the women in her family's workshop repairing tapestries, which fostered her associations between needlework with repair in a psychological and physical sense. So this is interesting. So even though her messages are overt, this idea of, weaving and this repair, that she's using it as symbology for actual psychic repair. So Druid says, okay, the Greek spider goddess is Arachne. She was a mortal woman renowned for her weaving skills who challenged the goddess Athena to a weaving contest. Okay, this is coming back. In some versions, Arachne lost the contest and was transformed into a spider by Athena. In other versions, she was transformed after hanging herself out of shame for her actions. Okay. It's nice to get a reminder of all those stories. Once you hear them, and they all I don't know, to me, like the Greek and Roman goddesses, gods and goddesses, they all kind of become one after a while. It's hard to remember who did what. At the same time as Bourgeois was working in soft sculpture, she produced a series of fabric drawings from old clothes and other textiles she'd saved over the years. Many of these personal items bear signs of their previous life through stains and wear, and by weaving and sewing these materials together, she essentially created a collection of abstract self-portraits. Sitting at her kitchen table in the last decade of her life, Bourgeois used a skill that is often employed in domestic setting to give household textiles, such as clothing sheets, napkins, etc., new life as fine art. It is a quietly radical series that shouldn't be overlooked within her wider oeuvre. Across her 8-decade career, Bourgeois masterfully walked the line between contrasting ideas. Her works are soft, but sculptural, gendered, and androgynous. The work she created in her old age recalls memories from her childhood. International success came later in life for Bourgeois. Another old lady? Oh my goodness, Wayward Bard. Hi! It has been a while. It's so good to see you here. I'm reading a little bit about Louise Bourgeois. Let's see. So international success came late in life, with her first retrospective taking place at the Museum of Modern Art when she was 71. Okay, I've got time! I've still got 20 years to get my retrospective. Fortunately, she continued working for another 27 years and was able to see her work exhibited at major institutions around the world. So Louise Bourgeois is another one. She created art forever, but her acclaim comes late in life, and I love that. So we're going to look at some of her art next, but as I was flipping through here, I'm thinking Dorothea Tanning might be our next one. So when I come back, I've put a bookmark in that. So we'll see. We'll see if Dorothea Tanning is the next one. So moving on to the picture. So like I said, this is out of The Woven Child, which I think this was let me see. So this is The Woven Child was her retrospective. The Woven Child was also a series. There is an actual piece of work called The Woven Child. And there's a whole bunch of different, objects, I guess, that make it up. But I think that, this was the retrospective that happened, it looks like, in her 70s, I'm thinking. So this is from the Hayward Gallery. I don't know where that is. You guys know where that is? The Hayward Gallery. So yeah, like I said, this book is, I took a lot of pictures out of this book, so copyright. So I guess I should probably say this book is Louise Bourgeois, The Woven Child. It's Hayward Gallery Publishing, and the compilers are This is another one of those, I think, published in Europe because it doesn't have the copyright page. All right. So anyway, you could definitely find this book online. I don't think it's cheap. I think I probably paid a little bit of money for this. So, but a lot of this work is online in different places. She's in major museum collections, the Tate. Yeah. So anyway, moving right along. Louise and the Berets. So there are a lot of pieces in her oeuvre. I told you, the French words. That she has this, there are certain pieces of her work that have this Marcel Duchamp like kind of feel to them. I'm not comparing her to Marcel Duchamp. Her outlook, her goals with her artwork, nothing like his. However, Wayward Bard, let's see. Oh, sorry for the ad hole. Am I familiar with Siribot? I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. I will look into that. Thank you. So, but this is some of the stuff that this is clothing, and this, I mean, some of this stuff is, I mean, this looks like a child's garment. And these are giant beef bones, I guess. I don't know what animal these bones are from, but they look very large. So my guess is it's like cattle or something. But, I mean, you've got an evening gown here. You've got slips, and then she's done some manipulation with this one. So it's, I don't know. Femurs. Yes, indeed. Yeah, those are definitely from some kind of large beast. So this is another one. This is just like a little stitched piece. And you see there's these buttonholes along the side. There's a number of these, and I'll show you a picture of a whole page of them later on. But I think they button together into like a book sort of thing, and we'll see another one. There's a woven child book, a soft sculpture book, but these are just okay. So this is part of the Ode à la Oubli. I shame myself with any type of French pronunciation. So yeah, this stuff was very, very soon before her death. So these are the last years of her life. She's in her 90s when she's doing these. I really responded to this one. It's so very simple. It is just embroidery stitches and some fabric on what looks like linen. Okay, so I took a lot of the pictures of these human form sculptural things. She made a lot of them. And like I said, some of them are really disconcerting. They're really, really interesting to look at. But I mean, we've already seen apparently that that imagined dinner table where the family has chopped up their father and is eating him. I can only imagine what is really behind some of these. So, I mean, this is like this headless figure. Now, another thing you're going to see themes, stripes. Stripes are a very big deal in her work. You see a lot of stripes. And the tapestries as well. She did some weird stuff with like prosthetic pieces. There's another piece we're going to look at that because it's not shown from multiple angles. It's only shown from this one angle. It's like really strange, and we'll look at that too. But this is getting into these themes of like, I mean, they're themes of sexuality. Obviously, they're figures entwined. Some of them are pretty obvious what's going on. Others, like, I mean, this could just be an embrace. This doesn't, this isn't necessarily like they're boning. It's, this could be completely innocent, but it also could have some heavy, sexual overtones. She also put a lot of her work in these interesting, like, cases. And this is one such case. She also has these cages, and the cages are very interesting. Some of them literally look like a Faraday cage. Some of them look like storage cages. the kind of things that you see like in a condo parking deck where you put your bicycle. You know, it's interesting, like with this, and it's obvious symbology. This one I know is called high heels, and I don't think that there is any question what we're looking at here. It's a woman assuming the position, and you see these creepy little high heels she's got. She's got a lot of junk in her trunk, and obviously there's kind of this more, it's like the body is twisted to the side a little bit. You can see like these are the boobs. Here's the childbirth image, which I put the content warning in the title about. But this one, and so she's got lots of drawings that are about this, you know, showing childbirth and the female form, the female body. But what I think is most interesting to look at this is, again, the way that she has taken these pieces. You know, if you were going to make, like, imagine a stuffed animal. You know, we've all seen or got stuffed animals. Some of us have many of them. But you look at, I'll hold up double T here. You look at, you know, you've got all of these seams that make up, you know, in a stuffed animal or a self-sculpture item. You've got all these seams that make up the shapes. And, you know, they make sense. You know, there's gussets to give yourself form, you know, and then there's, you know, body parts that are created out of multiple pieces. But she took these kind of, they're like almost scraps, and she's like patched them together. So, I mean, this looks like, you know, a little Frankenstein-y, you know, and, you know, again, I guess that's going with what we just read. It's this idea of the stitching being able to put things back together and repair. So that's what I see it as, like these broken bodies, and they're stitched back together in this form of repair. And then, I mean, this one has given birth. So some heavy mother stuff going on here. Here's another one of these odd prosthetic things. And there's a couple of others, but like, look at this one. I mean, she's literally stitched the leg onto the peg leg. And like, I ask you, when was the last time you saw a legit peg leg? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, not to digress into discussion about, you know, prosthetics and you know, disability, but can you imagine how difficult it would be to be a person that has lost a limb and having to walk with this thing? I can only imagine how painful it would have been. And obviously, you know, she's paired it with a crutch. I've certainly seen like period pieces where you've got somebody that's, you know, they need a crutch or a cane or something, even with this prosthetic wooden leg. But yeah, just looking at this, and again, the body is all stitched together, like it's been broken and put back together. One of the things that I, you know, like I said, I don't necessarily like, I mean, looking at her work, it's very thought-provoking. And some of it I really respond to the forms and things. But some of them, I look at them and they're, like I said, they're disconcerting. They're like, ugh, they're kind of repellent a little bit. And like, this is an example. Like, what? Pirates just entered the chat. Right? We're a little early for Talk Like a Pirate Day. But yeah, I mean, you look at this, and this picture is, you know, it's a little grainy, and of course I'm photographing a picture in a book, so it's hard to tell, but like this it's not really a face. So it's a little disconcerting. You know, again here, this big ball, I have made a spherical sculpture. I've made a couple of them. So if you guys, I can't remember the last time I showed my Westtown Girls globe that I made. But typically when you if you're going to make a sphere out of fabric, it's got like, you know, it's mathematical, you know, the pieces. Think about a basketball, a baseball. There's many different ways you can take a flat material and make it into a sphere. This is not the easiest way to take all of these different pieces and patchwork them together into this ball. I would just be so interested to look at this piece and, to know more about how she constructed it. If it was me, if I was, had to go out and construct this, I would take like one of those, those, what do you call them? The yoga balls, the big exercise ball. You can sit on them. I would totally take one of those and just start, stretching the fabric out on it, right? I don't know what is in this. How big this piece is, let's see. Did I get let me see. Unfortunately, the sizes of these things are not always given, but for the most part, they're approximately life-sized. So this one's called Endless Pursuit, from 2000. Yeah, I don't have sizes really on any of this stuff. But I would say, just based on what I've seen in like the gallery settings for these, they're approximately life-sized. So I would say that the human piece of this, the head and the shoulders, are probably about life-sized, is my guess. Don't hold me to that because I don't know. This is one of those things, like, we're so used to with quilts saying, like, kind of knowing how big it is usually, but unfortunately, the art machine doesn't always tell you. This one I kind of like just because it's got 3 heads. And look at the faces on these things. This Louise Bourgeois is a talented artist. But she chooses, these are choices. So these faces are just very, very disconcerting. And, it reminds you kind of like a ski mask sort of look. And this one has less pieces pieced together. It is still, no, this one is not a tapestry. Some of these pieces are made out of tapestry. This one appears to be made out of knit fabric. So you've got the stretch. You don't have to piece as many pieces together to get forms, I guess. Yeah, Robin, I think she mostly worked on the larger scale. I mean, these are not small, like, hold it in your hand kind of items. These are bigger pieces, even if they're not like fully like human sized, although I think they really are. I think that was kind of her point, to make these things as human sized ish as possible. This one's interesting in that the reason I took this one is, like, these arms are super long and they're all kind of intertwined. Like, it's not just arms. Like, it's connected. It's like a tube. And I believe it circles around the body and connects with this one. So, just the way that the figures merge, there's these interesting, like, play with the shapes and the objects. And I'm sure, again, there's this symbolism here. And this looks like bath towels or bath mats. I suspect this is some type of tapestry or carpet material because it's, this loopy stuff. I don't think she wove any fabric to make this. So it's just some kind of substrate. I don't know what it is. But it's very interesting. I mean, you pull back from this, they kind of look a little Muppety, with the fabric, but, pull back away from it and it's an interesting sculptural piece. Look at these big old feet and legs. Now my suspicion, and, in talking about size, is that probably this middle one might be the more human sized, or maybe this one. I suspect these are really big. And there's like a hole straight through this one. Like, she's got to have some kind of thoughts about that. So this piece is called Woven Child. But it is not the only woven child. She has like multiple. So I think that it's this body of work that's called the Woven Child. Even though there are ones that are specifically named that. This mesh bag kind of thing that the little baby is in, it reminds me of those bags that you like put lingerie in to wash. So I think that's probably another good sort of size clue. So I think that this baby is probably like hold it in 2-hand sized. And I don't know what this is. Like, I guess this is just a metal form that, was created. And, this is another good question. When you look at stuff like this, obviously the baby, is part of her stitching practice, her body of work. But this form, it's almost lamp-like. Is this a found object? I suspect it is, or it's something she had made. I don't think, see if I have a date on this one. Yeah, this is later. I don't have the date on this page, but she's like 80 or 90 years old at this point. She's not like whipping out the welding torch. So, was this piece made for something else, or is it specifically for this? I don't know. This is weird. And then this is one of those things, I don't know what this thing is on the top of here. It looks like a big melon ball or some kind of ice cream guy. I don't know. So in talking about scale, if this is human sized, then that thing is gigantic. So, this is one where I kind of question, yeah, a melon or a meatball, but it's so big. But you look in here at the stitch, I often will look at stitches in things to kind of, give you some kind of gauge to how big this is. This is a knit. So if you think about a sweater, and is this an actual found piece, or is this something that was manufactured to look like this? Or I don't know. Did she take a picture of her thing and then like collage this on top? That's almost what it looks like. I don't know. I will have to look into this one more, because this one's confounding to me. Okay, so this is another one of these tableaus. And you see that it's got all of these different figures. Some are laying in bed, and you've got the childbirth one here. You've got a figure that appears to be pregnant to me, but she doesn't have arms. And then you've got things here like, what is this? Is it meat on a plate? Is it this human form? I don't know. And it's set in front of this kind of reflective material. It's not a mirror. So, again, disconcerting. Very disconcerting. So there are a lot of these kind of elongated shapes, and this one is the human, it's got legs, but there are also these soft sculptures that are not human that we'll look at in a minute. This one reminds me of one of those shells, those spirally shells you find on the beach with legs hanging out of it. Yeah, Venus of Willendorf, definitely. A lot of her work does have like the torso part of it. The woman's body is very Venus looking, Venus of Willendorf. And she is calling back to those like ancient sculptures that, have lost arms and heads and things. So this looks like it's made out of linen, maybe. So yeah, unfortunately the pictures also don't give the materials. That's one of the frustrations of some publishers. They don't give you the details that you really want. And that, this is another one of those, I would love to look at it and be able to walk around it and figure out how she made the form out of these different pieces. Like what does that construction look like? And I'm also super curious, like, what she stuffed these with. I haven't seen anything that explains like what she has stuffed them with. So here are stripes. Here's some stripes. This one to me, very disconcerting. It's just this, body arched backwards, dangling from its belly button, essentially. But again, there's like weird heads. This one is a female form, and it is constructed out of bed springs and what looks to me like some kind of sheer, like, knit material. You can see all these pieces that were, once part of bed springs, part of a mattress. And I think this looks like underwear here, actual underwear. This is another one of those, and you've got this head inside, and again, I'm asking the question, what is that head made out of? I don't know. But what's stretched over it looks like very heavy, like nylon stocking, pantyhose kind of stuff. I'm guessing it might be an actual lingerie item, like like underwear or something, panties. I don't know, but it's giving that kind of vibe. So this is one of the ones similar to what is actually on the cover of this book. And this is, without a doubt, you see the tapestry. I think a lot of her work was, the ones that are the solid colors. They're still tapestries, but it's not so obvious because they're solid colors, or she's cut pieces. But this is straight up tapestry. And I like this one because it's symmetrical. The way she's cut it and constructed it, it's got, the pattern is very clear. So to me, it's got this sort of decorative quality. The one that's on the cover of the book, not so much. It's more of like sort of scrappy pieced together. Even though she's utilized parts of the design and the tapestry to make the eyes and things. This is another one utilizing this big piece of tapestry. This one, I couldn't quite put my finger on why it's disconcerting. But I think it's just, it doesn't really have, the features are all kind of soft, but it's still that elongated, weird face and head. But then you have this like beautiful, these beautiful flowers, but still like they're not supposed to be there. and that gives it that kind of creep element. This one, I'm sorry, you guys. This was the 12-year-old in me that looked at this one and went, they're just touching tongues. I actually have a wig form that looks just like this. It's not pieced together, but it's kind of got the big bulbousness, and it's the same color. And of course, it doesn't have any features because it's a hat / wig form. But I don't know why. When I saw these, that's what it reminds me of. The other pop culture connection that, and again, this is me, I'm being so juvenile, but if you have ever watched The Big Bang Theory, the comedy, Howard Wolowitz, who is the engineer, and Rajesh Koothrappali, who is the astrophysicist, are best friends, and there's this ongoing theme in the show where they're like, there's this, like, the appropriateness of their friendship is almost like, are they a couple? Sometimes you're just like, it's weird. So there was this kissing machine that Howard Wolowitz engineered, and there's a whole scene in a show where he and Rajesh Koothrappali are testing it, and it's like you're kissing the one machine, and the other one can be literally in another country or something, and that person can kiss it back, and it's very creepy. It's really gross, and that's what this reminded me of, and I'm sorry. I'm sure that there is some sort of like important, deep relationship meaning here, but I just couldn't help myself. I totally thought about that show. This Thank you, Robin. Thank you. And Wayward, I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about. That's what your laughter was for. So this was, the threes. You're seeing a little bit of threes. You got 3 heads. Remember the 3 legs. This is 3 faces. I don't know what this material is. Let's see. This looks like it could be some of the tapestry. But but I can't tell exactly. This kind of looks knitted, but I don't know what this kind of red and green, and I'm not sure. You know, the lips are sort of accentuated there. That's interesting. You know, there's some aspects of this that are a little bit more refined than some of those other ones. And look at the chin here. I want you to pay attention to this. Do you see this sort of, it's coming together? It's symmetrical. It's all these symmetrical pieces. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, you can make a shape out of very symmetrical pieces. It doesn't have to be this like scrappy all over the place. These very symmetrical pieces have created this chin. That imagery, this is stripy, right? That imagery is coming back in a second. This is another one of these tableaus. And this, to me, this is totally giving Marcel Duchamp. And think of that last weird sock monkey butt. It does. This gives me that, remember the Marcel Duchamp, that last piece he did, that secret piece that nobody knew about until he was dead. It's the woman's torso. She's lying back, and it's you have to look at it through that. That's what this gives me. That gives me that kind of vibe of like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be looking at this? Like, what's happening here? And you can see here is one of the spiders. And this one, the spider's small. You know, we can get the scale of things here because you've got the clothing and the dollhouse. And this thing here is actually this little, it's like a dollhouse stairwell. It's very strange. But yeah, there's this spider here. And just looking at this is so creepy. But it's fascinating, right? Yeah, it's a creepy spider, but it's fascinating to look at. And again, it's one of those things where like, did I accidentally come in here? Like, am I meant to be here? That's a lot of times when I look at these tableaus like this, you think to yourself, did I stumble on something? Am I supposed to be looking at this? Like, that's the feelings it gives you. So here we go. These are the cages. And this one, it looks very industrial. But then you have these strange forms. And this is where I think they're talking about, you know, she's combining body part forms. And they're not overt. They're just like, you know, and you're like, what am I looking at here? That pink thing is kind of going through the white. Interesting, so interesting to look at, but disconcerting for sure. Yeah, it does. It looks like meat. And we're going to see some more of those. This thing, I'm like, is this a Faraday cage? What is happening here? I don't think this is one with a spider. But she did do some pieces where it's this, and then the spider is on the top of it. There it is. And this is almost like your full circle here. You've got these tapestries, like, I mean, this tapestry doesn't look, it looks like it's not been altered. It's like the full size, and it's just been hung inside this cage. Then you have these strange forms, and I guess this is like a chair, you know, and then this enormous spider. Ugh. And, you know, like we said, the this is that mother, you know, is it protecting? Is it like, is this its web? Is this predatory? Like, we don't know. It's kind of looked at that, you know, you could look at it all these different ways. Okay, this one gets me because it's like a spider and a little form, and it's like, ah! It's my worst nightmare is to wake up and have this giant spider on me. But here's another size clue. That little form is tiny. I mean, it's like the size of a baby. You know, because you can tell because of this chair, and it's like it's set into this. I mean, it's a cage, but it's made out of like a window. I mean, that's very strange. That's very disconcerting. It's haunting. I think maybe not disconcerting, haunting, because you're like, what is happening here? This could be like a horror movie poster, I think. Here's, so these, I'm not sure what these are. It reminds me of a basket tree, but also these forms, these black forms, I think they're spools. I think they're spools of like, this definitely looks like a cone of thread. So I think that's what they are. And so this might be related to something in, industrial weaving. Um, but this, whatever this thing is, this long skinny pole with these like hook things, um, she uses multiple of them. So it's not like, this isn't something I don't think that she had, that she created or she had created. I think it's like a found object from some sort of industrial application. I think that's, I'd put money on that. But so you've kind of got this assemblage of these industrial pieces, Marcel Duchamp, but you have this piece she's made, and like, what is this? It's like, it's kind of got this drop, like it looks kind of like meat, but it's also maybe got, I mean, it's just a strange organic form. It's almost like silly putty that's just kind of dripping. So this, like, what is all this stuff? Like, this seems to be like a shirt, maybe. This is something I was alluding to back when we looked at the prosthetics. So you've got this like what looks like a prosthetic arm, but is it a sculpture? Is it a statue? It's a tree trunk. Like, this is a tree trunk, and it's got this arm that has been sculpted into it, and what looks like the beginning of maybe a head here. But the thing is, we don't see the other side of it. Now, I assume in a gallery setting, you would be able to walk around this, perhaps. I don't think it would be set against a wall. I don't know. I mean, what I've seen of the pictures, they all look like they're kind of this, it's your standard like art magazine photography. It's not a gallery photography, so it's really hard to tell how this was installed. But and then it's hanging by this big ring. So I can't even imagine. This thing must be so heavy. I was in a show a couple years ago where one of the other artists had a piece that was made out of like an old stump, and it was pretty big, and it sat on a plinth. And I was there when it's actually his parents came to pick it up because he wasn't available to pick it up on the day we had to get our stuff out of there. And they had like a cart that they had to put it on because it's heavy. So I'm looking at this thing going like, how's this rod thing must be substantial to hold that. But it looks just like that other picture. So I'm like, again, like, is this something she had manufactured, or is this some kind of factory item? I don't know. Yeah. So, you've got a lot of all this stuff coming together in some of these works. You've got the weird sculpture and the clothing, and I don't know what this is over here. Looks like, I don't even know. Very haunting. So like I said, she's got all this self-sculpture that is not human form. And I really like these. There is a piece I saw literally the month that the pandemic started, and it was a Native American piece. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was at the Renwick. It was a show they did. It was Indigenous works by contemporary Indigenous artists, as well as some Native artifacts. So it was clothing, but they were artifacts. And there's a piece of like blankets, the trade blankets, like Navajo trade blankets, that look just like this. In that look of these like sort of soft, squishy pieces that are stacked up. She made bunches of these. And you can see like her stitches are very obvious. This has nothing to do with craftsmanship. I think it's her choice to make these stitches obvious, going back to the stitching things together as a form of um, fixing things and putting together putting broken parts back together. This one I think I like the most because this is like, these are pictorial tapestries. You can see these, flora and fauna type forms. Like you could see what this probably, originally looked like. And here's another one. This one's very pleasing looking, I think. This one appears to be made out of a bunch of different types of fabrics. Possibly some of these wools and knits and things that she was using. But this one was cool because these are those kind of like flattened. Think about that big blue, the ball with the head and shoulders, and then it had these two sort of flappy breasts. That's what these shapes look like. So when you look at her whole body of work, you've got all these things that seem very disparate. But then you start looking at the individual components in them, and you're like, oh, she's been doing this all along. It just takes different forms, and the way it, but you start to see them coming together. So what's hanging here, I think, is another one of these sort of fabric blobs, but also it kind of looks like a beret. Looks like somebody tossed a beret on some type of rack. Oh yeah, yep. They do look like couch cushions and like a rock, yeah, one of those rock things. Um, this thing here, these little, like, they look like little cups. I'm wondering if this is some kind of like candelabra. I don't know. You look at these things and or are those, or is it a thing that you put a spool on top of if this is truly an industrial piece? I wish I knew somebody who like has done industrial weaving. I actually do know somebody who's done industrial weaving that could probably tell us right away. And then this one, like, what are these things? They're just sort of these like floppy sacks that have, are coming down off of this form. This one's fairly pleasing, I think. These look like they're out of a knitted fabric. And here, the rack thing, it's definitely spools of thread, and they are attached to the blobby form with needles. So you see, like, you've got this like really overt references to needlework. And I guess, going back to that idea of mending and putting things back together, it's just, she keeps iterating on that idea. Now, we're going to get into some more into our world. This piece, she did all of these quilt-like forms. Now, what I think this is I think this like rust and black and brown piece, I think that's one piece of fabric. I don't think that she's like pieced anything. I think this is one piece of fabric woven to look like that. And then here on the left hand side, it looks like it's tons and tons of little squares pieced together. They're actually woven strips. Now I don't know if there's any sewing involved here, because if there is, it's done neatly. It's, you don't see any, this seam line is very clean. You don't see the stitches. So, but my assumption is that this is stitched together. You just don't see it. But up close, you can see that it's woven. These are woven pieces. And these are fairly late in her life when she's doing these. Remember, I said the webs are coming back. This is some amazing piecing. So I think this is ticking fabric, like mattress ticking fabric. And you zoom in here, you can see that is indeed what it looks like. But look how she has manipulated these pieces, and she's pieced them together so they create these webs. There is a contemporary artist. Why do I always blank when I try to think of somebody's name? But a contemporary artist who made quilts like quilted, sandwiched, quilted, wound, all that look very similar to these, but they're more star-like than they are web-like. So the way and it's all about the direction that you put the stripes in, right? I love this one. I think this one's really cool. This is another one spread out across 2 pages, but here you've got, you know, things that look very like similar to our world. You know, I mean, this could come out of any of our quilting books. Looks like a shibori type of fabric, and then these other fabrics just look like cotton or linen. And I mean, you know how these were done. All of you who have made a quilt knows how these are done. You know, it's just piecing together the strips, cutting them into wedges, and then piecing the wedges. And, you know, there's mathematics there so that your angles are correct and it's going to lay flat. And remember, she started off in mathematics at the Sorbonne before she moved over to do art. This one, I want to say this one might have been done. Let's see, do I have the date? No, I don't think I took a picture of the date, but I want to say this one was like in the very last few years of her life. Oh, I know, Robin, right? But also, if they made it smaller to fit on one page, we wouldn't be able to see the detail as much, you know? I mean, it's such a double-edged sword. This has got crazy quilt vibes. It's got, you know, the spider web kind of look, but, you know, she's doing this, like if it's spider web, if that's what she's going for, it's a fractured spider web because of the way that she has pieced the strips. They don't come together with that nice, neat web-like look. They look fractured, right? You know, so she's playing with that in these little pieced pieces, and I think these are pretty small. Again, no dimensions that I remember seeing in the book, but I think these are fairly small pieces, and you can imagine that based on the stitches. So I would put this piece at, like, you know, maybe 12-15 inches at tops. This one is so cool. This is obviously the back side of the piecing, but I suspect she displays it this way, and I don't think this is saying like this is the back of the piece. It's not. This is what she considers to be the front of the piece, but I think it gives it even more of that web, that spider web look. And see, like, sans a spider. I love this. Now, if she put one of her spiders on this, I would be like, no thank you, Louise, I'm not interested. This is another, like, so striking. And you can pick out the various pieces in here. They are not necessarily our traditional, you know, like if you were going to make a star quilt, it's not necessarily our traditional piecing method. She has chosen sort of different ways of putting these pieces together. You know, like you've kind of got the star piece up here, but when you come down here, the shapes are cut differently, you know? It's really interesting. And then she's got these, like, silk flowers or artificial flowers in the center. There's several of these where she's put flowers in the center of the spider web look. There's one that's got, I think it's roses in the center. Now these are more of her woven fabrics. And when you get in here tight, you can see there's strips of fabric that have been woven. And then she's got these dimensional pieces that she's made out of some kind of netting and put on top. Okay, so I mentioned she's got a lot, you know, later in her life, she's got a lot of these themes and images coming together. And so this is a piece, it is on fabric. It's fairly large. It's like a sheet, a household linen of some sort. It's a clock. Clocks, not as big of an imagery thing, but there are clocks in her work. And you have these forms, and I think they're painted. They're either painted or drawn. And I mean, this is the human form. This is, you know, getting back into some some genitalia, some sexual, This definitely has all kinds of symbolism going on, I'm certain. This is a very small piece. It's obviously an old household linen. It's got some holes in it. These are hooks and eyes, and then she's just taken a pin and pinned through. And then one I loved about these is she's signed with her initials in the corner. Not all of these flatworks did she do that. So these are all of these different pieces she made. Again, this is towards the end of her life, and some of them are, woven. Some of them appear to be pieced. Some of them are literally like, this is just a big piece of lace. This is piece, but you see, you've got these little buttonholes. And so these all do go together. And I've got some more close-ups here. This is another, this is a separate one. This is not a book. I think these are all individual. You see she signed every page. There are no buttonholes. This one looks like that sun print, the sun print fabric. This clock, this is that piece. She's using artificial flowers. Which saying? I had a flashback of something that never existed. Is that what you mean? Oh, it's this one. I didn't look at this very closely. Yeah, look. She's got they're like these little tiny starburst things, and then you've got looks like pins, but this is all embroidered. So yeah, like she's these things keep coming up. Look at this. These looks like little box shapes. So calling back to her sculptures. Yeah, she's really in touch with her body of work. So yeah, I had a flashback of something that never existed. I like that too. That's that. What is that called? So deja vu is living something, something's already, like you're reliving something that's already happened. I think it's jamais vu is the feeling of foreignness, of this has never happened before. Those are really interesting concepts. So the point I was making, look, this fabric, however she's created this, it's those little starbursty things. Like, she's got incredible, I don't want to say control, but she's got incredible vision in terms of sort of staying true to all of these images. And even when it seems like she's kind of gone out into left field, different medium, you're still picking up, you're like, oh, yep, there it is. I loved this one because this is this looks like, I don't think it's seam binding. I think it's just fabric that she's cut on a bias, and then she's just made it into these knots. Remember those bodies that were all the arms were kind of intertwined? They were one long tube. Like, this kind of gives me that vibe. This one looks so much like a quilt. But I think it's actually like, it's either a print or it's a handkerchief. I suspect it's a handkerchief. As you see, it's got this little edging here. I could be totally wrong. These sort of little shadowy bits there, that says like print to me. So I don't know. She's a printer. She was a painter printmaker at one point. So okay, so this is The Woven Child. This is a book. And then these are the pages. So imagery, you've seen this imagery all through. And then these are woven. And so the human forms, are independent of the weaving, but you can see how they've kind of been spliced in. It appears like they've been spliced in, and possibly maybe with a few stitches. So this one's that kind of like fetal position form. This is the Venus of Willendorf type form. There you got a big weird head. This one's a head and head and shoulders. And then this is the last one. There was a whole page of her drawings, and I just like this one. It's simply called The Needle. And it's something that you don't see in her work, except there's that one with the needles coming off of the spool threads. And then you've got that little piece with the hooks and eyes that have the pins. But otherwise, you see the fruits of the needle's labor. You don't see the actual needle. So I thought it was interesting that she did this sketch. Honestly, looks like it was like a pencil and a red ballpoint pen. So that's Louise Bourgeois. Yeah, I don't know that I learned much more about her. I think that I need to read this book. Again, it's the reading part of it is only like, it's probably only like 20 pages, it's not even that dense. I think I'm gonna, if I have time before I leave on my trip, I think I'm going to definitely read this. And maybe we'll come back and we'll do another Louise Bourgeois, because she's got work all over the place in a whole bunch of different collections. So I suspect there's definitely more to dig into with her. Maybe I can find something that has like the dimensions. I think the museums often will have dimensions on things, and they'll give a little bit more information about like materials. I really would love to find, one that's on display somewhere. Certainly, museums have her stuff in their permanent collections, but you can't always guarantee that you're going to get, you're actually going to see it on display. So I hope you enjoyed that dip into Louise Bourgeois and her unsettling and haunting works. Like I said, I've looked at a lot of her work. I'd never really read much about her. So, I don't know that we discovered a whole lot more about her, but I think her work is still really interesting to look at. So that said, we are gonna get into our fabulous book. I'm not gonna do the recap because my gosh, so much has happened. But where we left off was talking about the Coast Guard had been out there, and they so Braun had gotten Irene stuck on like a sandbar. What was it called? The gull ledges. So he got in the boat stuck. The Coast Guard, they were out there looking for the rum runners. They wrecked their boats. They ran into each other or something. The church bazaar was good for the church, disappointing for Edith and Jerusha. And the crazy quilt has been found, but we still don't know what it's about. So that's as much as I can give you. All right. So we were right in the middle of Jerusha's narrative, Jerusha's current narrative. So we're going to pick up there. Chester has been eating waffles in the kitchen and telling the story about the Coast Guard. And so that's where we'll go from there. So this is called Waiting and Wondering. As Chester, Freddie, and Braun climbed into Chester's car, the sun, which had been valiantly burning off the last remnants of fog, slid under a cloud. An east wind sprang up. Starting right then, sunshine and warmth left my life too. For one thing, all through the rest of July, we never had another stretch of fine, hot days. For another, Aunt Edith started cleaning house. She said she had neglected the housework while she worked on the bazaar. She said Grandma would never have let the place get so filthy, and she was mortified. So she started scrubbing and polishing and taking up rugs and taking down curtains and piling up the chairs on the tables. She had got the house so stirred up that I couldn't be comfortable anywhere. And then Chester brought up 24 boxes of raspberries for jam. The raspberries wouldn't keep, so Aunt Edith left the house cleaning where it was and started on the jam. When Grandma made jam, I always helped her. I picked over the berries, and she didn't mind how many I ate on the side. When the jam was seething in the big kettle, she was putting out the fire that was burning in the saucepan of paraffin because she had let it get too hot. I would notice just in time that the jam was boiling over. I always saved the day. I helped her decide whether the gob of jam she dropped from a teaspoon into a glass of cold water formed a soft ball, which meant the jam was cooked just right, or a hard ball, which meant it was cooked too much, or no ball at all, which meant we should let it boil some more. We were never sure whether our jam would turn out leathery, runny, or perfect, but we had fun. Aunt Edith made jam scientifically with scales, a stopwatch, and a thermometer. She was so cross and particular that I didn't want to help her. I stayed out of her way. I sailed the catboat up and down the harbor in all weathers. I dug clams. I practiced swan dives at the cove. When the sun shone, I lay under the arbor vitae with my candy, gum, and a book. There was no zest in any of it, for Braun had stopped coming. From the day he moved Irene out of the cove, none of us ever saw him. Once or twice when I was sailing, I saw Irene in the distance, but she never came close enough for me to hail her. In fact, she was always sailing away from me. I knew Braun was busy, and maybe he didn't see me, but I wondered. No, it wasn't the weather, nor Aunt Edith with her house cleaning and jam that spoiled the summer for me. It was the absence of Braun and the suspicion that he was avoiding us. The summer was spoiled for Aunt Edith, too, and for the same reasons. She cleaned house and boiled jam to keep from thinking about Braun. She never told me this. I found it out gradually, bit by bit, and in the same way she found out how I was feeling. At this time, she started to read aloud to Freddie before he went to bed. She sat with him in the parlor. The evenings had turned chilly. And Grandpa listened, and so did I, as she started reading from the Jungle Book. I had read the stories loads of times already, and each time I loved them more. Especially, I loved to hear them read aloud. The resounding cadences of look well, O wolves," always made my spine tingle, and the whole book pulsed with changing rhythms as exciting as the stories themselves. Yet even when I was listening to Aunt Edith reading out of my favorite book, and she read well, I was also listening for Braun. When Aunt Edith stopped in mid-sentence, as if something outside the story had jarred her attention, Grandpa coughed impatiently. Freddie wiggled and whispered, "Go on." But I pricked up my ears and listened with her. Aunt Edith and I listened and hoped and waited together for Braun. All through the day, we went right on at cross purposes, but in our evening, our thoughts flowed together. At supper, before Kipling charmed him into forgetfulness, poor Grandpa always complained because Irene was no longer in the cove, and Braun never came to meals with us anymore, and he wanted to know why. Aunt Edith made up reasons for Irene's disappearance and Braun's neglect. We were all very careful never to mention the bootleggers at the cove in front of Grandpa. When he and Freddie had gone to bed, it was a relief to Aunt Edith and me to admit that Braun's behavior perplexed and worried us, and even hurt our feelings. When no visitors came, we sat up late talking about Braun and sewing, just like two grown-up ladies. "All our lives," said Aunt Edith, "Braun and I have been quarreling and making up. We've never been not speaking so long as this before, and so far as I know, this time we haven't even quarreled. Sometimes," she went on, "I wonder if he has fallen in love with a beautiful summer girl at the yacht club and can't tear himself away from her long enough to come here." I remembered that session with Mary on my first morning at the Haven. According to Mary, all the girls at the yacht club are crazy about him and chasing after him. Of course, Mary's an awful liar. She admits it herself. "I expect Mary's right," said Aunt Edith. "Why shouldn't the girls be crazy about Braun? He's handsome and clever and full of fun. And why wouldn't Braun fall in love with a rich, pretty girl who was chasing him? It all seems quite natural. We both stiffened for a moment, listening to something that might have been steps at the front door, at the side door, but it was only the wind. If he was in love with some girl at the yacht club, I said, maybe he wouldn't want you to know. Why do you think that, Jerusha? He knows Grandma didn't approve of the sort of summer people who belong to the yacht club, and you don't either. He'd be ashamed. For a long time, Aunt Edith stitched away at her square of patchwork and didn't say anything. We were trying to finish a quilt called Young Man's Fancy that Grandma had been working on when she died. I love that. You know, the funny thing is, like in this book, of course, the crazy quilt is like the I don't know, the core star, I guess. But she does actually do, or she talks about sewing more often than I really expected. I sort of thought the crazy quilt would just be it. But the fact that there's other sewing, spoken about here, I thought it was kind of cool. Do you really think that Braun stays away because he's in love with the girl he is ashamed to bring home? She asked. I shook my head. I don't think so, because I don't think he'd fall in love with the girl he was ashamed of. And if he wasn't ashamed of her, he'd want to bring her home to show her to us. Exactly, said Aunt Edith. Braun was never sneaky, and I must say, Jerusha, that for a girl of your age, you have good judgment and good sense. While I'm at it, I might as well air all my silly, vulgar suspicions. Sometimes I wonder if Braun is mixed up somehow in this rum-running business and doesn't want us to know. I kind of wondered that myself. Oh, no, I cried. He'd never do a thing like that. He wouldn't break the law. I could see him on Irene's deck telling us his ambitions. He was going to do something outstanding and splendid to make up to his parents for all the years they were foreigners here and couldn't talk to anyone. He's going to prove that even though he is foreign and has a funny name, he can be a better American than any of us. Aunt Edith smiled. That sounds just like him. He is so excitable and always up on the defensive. Besides, I pressed on, the night I heard the rum runners in the cove, Braun was aground on gull ledges, so he couldn't have anything to do with them. Chester knows he isn't a rum runner. If he were, Chester wouldn't talk the way he does in front of him. He'd arrest him. Chester isn't dumb. Aunt Edith laughed. You've convinced me that Braun isn't running rum. I didn't really believe he was. He's too intelligent to take such risks for little money. Talk as we might, we couldn't think up an acceptable explanation for Braun's continued absence. One night, a week or so later, I said in despair, since Braun left, nothing is any fun. Why don't we find him and ask him why he stays away? Maybe he'll tell us, and maybe we can persuade him to come back again. Aunt Edith laid her square of patchwork on her lap. No, I'll never force myself on Braun. But Aunt Edith, I'm afraid I whined. Tears were gathering in my eyes. We all miss him, not just you and me, but everyone. Can't we find him and just ask him? It won't do any harm. Aunt Edith, who usually avoided caresses, reached out and with a gentleness that reminded me of my mother, patted my knee before she spoke. I can't, but I guess you can. If you were very unhappy, perhaps you should. She gave me a long, anxious look before she picked up her sewing and went on in her usual crisp, matter-of-fact manner. No one can make Braun come back or tell us his reasons for staying away. He's free to do as he pleases, and he's answerable to no one, except his own conscience. We have no claim on him, but if you want to find him and ask him why he stays away, well, go ahead. Before I went to sleep that night, I had determined that the very next day I would seek out Braun and ask him why he was avoiding us. Nothing, it seemed to me, that he might tell me could be more worse than dragging along without him. I would tell him how much we all missed him, how Aunt Edith and I talked about him almost every night and worried about him too. Surely he would explain everything, come back, and we would all be happy again. We're on a new section. Perfidy. Since the next morning was fine, I decided to go after Braun in the catboat. I was most likely to find him at either the town wharf or the yacht club, a long, tiresome walk, but a pleasant sail. I hoped Freddie would come with me. He always had a softening influence on hard hearts. Freddie, however, had agreed to look over old barns and garages with Chester, who was considering buying one or the other and moving it next to his own garage for an annex. Chester picked Freddie up at 7:30 when he delivered his mother at Cousin Harriet's. I got out of the house as soon after breakfast as I could, and with my sail bag over my shoulder, was just leaving our driveway when I was hailed from behind. "Hey, wait up!" I looked back to see Mary beating her way across the field, tacking clumsily around the beach plum bushes. She ran knock-kneed in her high heels, the way ladies do. She drew up, panting, with her bracelets clanking. What's eating on the it girl?" I asked pleasantly. "Lay off the kidding, Jerry. I can't take it. Not today." "What's the matter?" "Everything. I'm all cut up. I'm a nervous wreck." She clutched her throat and screwed up her eyes to show how much she suffered. "Disappointed in love?" I asked. Mary groaned. "It's easy for you, who've never been in love, to kid about it. And he talks to you. He smiles at you. He asks you onto his boat." Mary gave me a baleful look. "I never thought the day would come that I'd be envious of you, Jerusha Fonts. But I'd give anything to be to him what you are. It's not much, but it's better than being spurned, which is what I am." "Are you by any chance talking about Braun?" "Who else?" "Where do you see him these days?" I asked with cunning I hadn't realized I possessed. "At the yacht club, mostly. Sometimes I row out with a message when he's in Irene on the mooring." "Do you see much of him?" "I see him. My knees go weak. I shake all over. My heart does somersaults in my breast." Mary screwed up her eyes again and whacked her chest. "And what does he do?" "I already told you. He spurns me. You don't have to rub it in." "I didn't mean to," I said. "For the past 2 weeks, Jerry, I've been so miserable you've no idea." "Yes, I have. I've been miserable too." As usual, Mary was too taken up with her own feelings to pay attention to mine. She went right ahead as if I hadn't said anything. "I suffer most over Braun, but there's the hag, too. At the dance after the bazaar, you wouldn't believe what she did. She marched right out of the dance floor and dragged me off by the hair. Actually, I mean by the hair, all because I was showing some boys how to Charleston. I was never so humiliated in my life, and I'll never live it down. The kids at the yacht club all giggle and wink at each other when they see me coming. I wouldn't go there anymore if it weren't for getting a chance now and then at Braun. Mrs. Munson has changed too. She's inconsiderate. She doesn't listen when I tell her about my problems with Braun and the hag. She's always busy. This morning she said she had to introduce Dagmar into some new territory, and she drove off early without even offering to take me along. She could have at least driven me as far as the yacht club, but she never thinks of me anymore, just herself. I'd have had to walk all the way if I hadn't seen you starting off with your sail bag. Now you can sail me over to the yacht club and I won't have to walk." You know, I'm kind of wondering, I suspect Mrs. Munson is just tired of Mary's crap. That's why she's not including her. "What makes you think I'm sailing to the yacht club?" "Why not? You might as well sail there as anywhere. And after all, it's the least you can do for an old friend in need." Mary's colossal insolence floored me. I could think of no reason for not taking her. I couldn't even think of a stinging retort. Out in the bay, the wind was fresh and the water was choppy. I made Mary sit forward, and I took considerable satisfaction in watching the spray break over her. I also enjoyed coming around without warning her and then yelling angrily because she got her head in the way of the boom. That once happened to me on a catamaran. My aunt's husband was sailing it, and he said coming around with the boom, and I missed that, and it whacked me in the head, and I almost fell off the boat. We were still 2 long tacks away from the yacht club when I spotted Irene. She wasn't on her mooring. She was bobbing up and down and straining on her sea anchor, well out in the bay. I'd have noticed her sooner if I hadn't been so busy making Mary uncomfortable. It seemed clear to me that Irene was having engine trouble, and it was my duty to sail over and offer to help. What a lucky opening this was. First, I'd offer to help. Then I'd work around to my real business with Braun. I planned how I would slip neatly under Irene's lee side and, without so much as a bump, lower my sail and tie onto her stern. Absorbed in my sailing, I forgot about Mary until, this time by accident, the boom conked her on the head and very nearly knocked her overboard. "Squat down in the bottom," I shouted, "and keep down until I've tied up." I came alongside Irene just as I had planned, made fast to a ring at her stern, and lowered the sail. Braun wasn't bent over the motor in the cockpit as I expected to find him. I climbed over Irene's stern. "Braun," I called, not very loud, for I felt uneasy about coming aboard without being asked. No one answered. I went forward and called again a little louder. Braun opened the cabin door, closed it behind him, bound up into the cockpit, and halted abruptly a few steps in front of me. "What's the matter? Is something wrong at home? I mean the Haven? Why did you come here?" His eyes glanced over me and around over the water in a worried way. "Nothing's the matter. I thought you had engine trouble. I sailed over to see if I could help." Braun didn't smile, as if he were relieved that we were all well at the Haven, or glad I'd come to help. "Nothing's the matter with the engine," he said. "I don't need any help. Thank you just the same." I gathered my courage. We wondered why you haven't been to see us in so long." "Oh." Braun looked down at his feet and pulled at his chin. "Of course, quite natural. You see, I'm very busy. I haven't had any time." He threw back his head and seemed to be addressing himself to the catboat's mast more than to me. "I'm writing a paper, a very difficult paper. It's due before I start back to school. I've put it off much too long. I've got to finish it. As a matter of fact, I anchored out here so I could work without being disturbed." Braun continued not to look at me. His face, usually so mobile, had taken on a wooden look, and he rocked stiffly back and forth on the balls of his feet like a rocking horse. I began again. "Of all the," exclaimed Braun, and clamped his teeth together so hard I heard the click. His eyes narrowed. He glared past me at the catboat. "So!" and he clamped his mouth shut again. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Mary's head ducked down behind Irene's stern. "Jerry," said Braun, "you must sail away this minute." He spoke quietly, but his eyes were hard and angry as he looked straight into mine, and I fell back frightened. "Please, Braun, I don't want—" "No, I'm sure you didn't," Braun interrupted me. "It doesn't make any difference. You sail away now, quick, and don't ever come aboard again without being asked. Do you understand?" I nodded, scrambled onto Irene's stern deck, and tried to untie the catboat's bowline. But tears started into my eyes, so I couldn't see the knot. Braun took it from me, untied it, and pulled the catboat in so I could climb aboard. "I'm sorry, Jerry," he said, "but you must leave me alone. I mean it." He threw the catboat's line to me and stood watching until, ever so clumsily, I hoisted the sail and got the catboat around into the wind and on a tack. I was too hurt and astonished to care very much about where I was sailing or how, and tears kept welling into my eyes, so I couldn't see where I was going anyway. "If you don't watch out," said Mary, "you'll go on gull ledges." I wiped my eyes and tried to see where I was. "Never mind taking me to the yacht club now," Mary went on. "Just take me back to the cove. It's that way," she pointed. "And don't talk to me. I've got a lot of food for thought." I had changed my course before the outrageousness of Mary hit me and filled me with a fury that for once I was able to express. "I'll take you back to the cove because that's where I want to go myself," I shouted. "I'm not your chauffeur, and I didn't ask you to come with me, and you're the one who does all the talking. Nothing would make me happier than not to have to listen to you for a change. You don't need to worry about me interrupting you. The longer you keep your mouth shut, the happier I am." The outburst eased my feelings and even seemed to make a small dent in Mary. "Okay," she said. "Okay, but watch what you're doing. You know I can't swim very well, and I'm too young to die." We exchanged no more words until we had tied up in the cove, and I was rowing us in the skiff. "It's all clear now," said Mary, and I was a dumbbell not to catch on before. I was in no mood to humor her by asking what she was talking about. I rowed on in silence. "We butted in on a rendezvous, Jerry. That's what we did. They're having an affair." "Dry up," I said, "and get out and help me pull up the skiff." Mary got out and made gestures as if she was helping, but she wasn't really. And all the time, she had a know-it-all smile on her face. She made me sick. I tied up the skiff, picked up my sail bag, and started for home. Mary came right behind me. "Your wonderful Braun and Mrs. Munson are having an affair. It's been going on all summer. Boy, was I dumb not to catch on sooner, but a lot of other people are dumber than me, like Mr. Munson and the hag. And you, Jerry, and your snooty Aunt Edith, who thinks no one has a right to Braun but yourselves." "You're crazy," I said. "You've been thinking too hard, and it's injured your brain." "Not me," said Mary. "Braun and Mrs. Munson are having an illicit clandestine love affair, and Irene's cabin is their love nest. It's just like the movies. Wow. Why don't you stop making up lies and mind your own business and shut up?" "I'm not making up anything. Mrs. Munson was in Irene's cabin when we were there just now." "You are so making it up. The cabin door was closed. You couldn't see inside." "You must need glasses, Jerry." Mary smiled at me in such a patronizing way, it was all I could do not to punch her. "Or you'd have seen Mrs. Munson's hat and her big white bag with Dagmar written on it, lying right out in plain sight on the bench in the cockpit." I recall that something white had been laying on a bench, but I'd been so wrapped up in my own business with Braun that I hadn't noticed what it was. Maybe she forgot them. Mary shook her head. "Mrs. Munson never forgets her bag. It's got everything she needs in it." They were probably having a business discussion. "Don't act dumber than you are already," said Mary. "The evidence, as they say in the movies, all points to an assignation between Mrs. M and Mr. Z in the cabin of the Irene this morning." "A what?" The word sounded sinister to me. "Assignation, spelled Assignatation. It means a meeting between lovers, and they weren't just pitching woo." "They can't be lovers," I retorted. "Mrs. Munson is married already, so there, smarty." "Honestly, Jerry, naive should be your middle name." Here was another word I didn't know. I could only glare at Mary and snarl. "It should not." Naive, pronounced naive, and means wholesome and sort of dim. Mary smiled patiently. "And your middle name should be Liar, spelled Liar, pronounced liar," I shouted. "Keep your shirt on," said Mary, "and listen. You might learn something. If Mrs. Munson was really just handing samples of anti-sunburn cream over to Braun, or if she was really just telling him about a group she got up to go fishing with him, why did she tell me she was taking Dagmar into new territory this morning? And why didn't she give me a lift to the yacht club since she was going right there herself? Why did Braun anchor Irene out in the middle of the bay if he was just having a business discussion with Mrs. Munson? And why did they have it inside Irene's cabin with the door shut on a nice sunny day like this? Why did Braun act so embarrassed when you came aboard? Why didn't he tell you he was having a business discussion with Mrs. Munson instead of making up all that stuff about writing a paper? Why did he get so mad when he saw me? Why was he in such a rush to get rid of us both?" Mary paused to give me time to take all this in. "You'll have to admit it, Jerry. Something is very fishy." I couldn't refute either Mary's facts or her insinuations, but I didn't want to talk to her. I started walking faster. Mary trotted right after me. "Are you going to tell your Aunt Edith?" "Leave me alone," I muttered. "I'm going to tell the hag." Mary smacked her lips. "Because it will make her so mad and look so silly after she took such a shine to Mrs. Munson. I'm going to open the next letter Mrs. Munson gives me to deliver to Braun and read it, and then show it to the hag. It'll be a love letter, making another assignation. Believe you me, Jerry, that's what it will be. With written evidence like that right under her nose, the hag can't say I made it all up." I walked faster still. Mary panted along right at my elbow. "What a stink there'll be when Uncle Edward hears that the hag herself handpicked a fallen woman to be my chaperone. Zowie, it's better than the movies." She gave a whoop of laughter and breathed hard. I couldn't stand her for a minute longer. I broke into a run and ran all the way to the rest of the house. Aunt Edith was on a stepladder washing the kitchen walls. I couldn't talk to her. I went up to my room and tried to think up reasons why Mary was wrong. But as I thought of Braun and remembered the things he'd done during the summer that had seemed unlike him, I had to admit that Mary's theory explained an awful lot. Right at the beginning of the summer, Grandpa had complained that Braun didn't come to the Haven as often as he used to. He hadn't come for supper to welcome Freddie and me the night we arrived, or for breakfast the next morning either, though Aunt Edith had been expecting him. He hadn't had any definite excuse. He had just said he was busy. The night of the fog and the dance, he had an excuse. He said he was stuck on gold ledges. I thought it wasn't like him to run Irene on a reef, even in a bad fog. He knew the harbor too well, and he was very careful of Irene. I remembered how Chester had said he had thought Braun was a better seaman than to do a stupid thing like that. That night, Mrs. Munson had left the church while I was serving supper, before the dance began. I remember how she stopped me on her way out and had spoken to me. Horrified at the way the evidence against Braun was piling up, I summoned to mind those happy sunny afternoons on Irene when he and Freddie and I swam and talked and drank sarsaparilla, and Braun always came home with us for supper and stayed late into the evening. He wasn't having any, whatever it was Mary had called it, love affair with Mrs. Munson then. He was his old self, gay and open and loving us all and happy to be with us. Suddenly, I saw Mary dripping and shivering in the cockpit of Irene on the afternoon she had swum out. I saw Braun ordering her off the boat and back to shore. How angry he had been, how unlike his usual self, and all because Mary hadn't brought him the message from Mrs. Munson that he expected. My heart sank. The harder I tried to disqualify Mary's vile theory, the better it seemed to fit. If I accepted it, my Braun, the one I loved, ceased to exist. He was just a disguise assumed by the real, false Braun. I couldn't give up Braun so easily. I told myself that Mary had distorted everything in her nasty way. Mary was poison. There must be a better explanation for Braun's strange behavior, which left him honest and true as he had always been. I dragged through the long afternoon waiting for evening and a chance to share my story and my trouble with Aunt Edith. She was grown up and clever. No one could call her whatever it was Mary had called me. Surely she could demolish Mary's theory with new facts, or with new and brilliant interpretations of the old ones. If she couldn't bring Braun back to us bodily, at least she could restore him to his true self. I counted on her. When Dr. Davis arrived while we were reading our dinner and announced his intention of spending the evening with Aunt Edith, I vowed to sit up in the parlor with them until he left, and I hoped my presence would cause him to leave earlier than usual, so I could talk to Aunt Edith. Fortunately, he was called away on an emergency soon after he arrived. Aunt Edith came back into the parlor after seeing him off and seeing Grandpa and Freddie to bed. And that is it for now. We will pick up at a later date, and this next part will still be Jerusha's narrative. This is a pretty long section. So, well, guys, it is 4 p.m. my time. Robin, all the drama that comes up with unrequited loves, right? And the thing is, Aunt Edith, she's an adult woman, but she grew up with Braun, even though they're not related. I think she's only a few years older than him. And then, Mary is just a teenager, and Jerusha's even younger. And so they've just got crushes on him, and it's like, what a mess. And oh my gosh, if he's really having an affair with Mrs. Munson, ugh. What do you guys think it might be? The rum running sounds like a possibility. An affair with Mrs. Munson. It sounds like all of the details we've gotten so far. What does it have to do with the crazy quilt, though? So, well, guys, I hope to see you on Saturday when Jill and I do Stitch and Glitch. But if you can't make it, if you got stuff going on, we totally understand. But yeah, I will not see you for a couple weeks. Eee! In the event that I do record anything, I will let you guys know. Yeah, Robin has the book. So do not read ahead, Robin. If you do, no spoilers. All right, guys. It is always so wonderful to see you here. And I will miss you very much. It will be obviously a very busy 2 weeks while I'm gone, but yeah, I will definitely miss seeing you guys. I will certainly be looking for things to take pictures of and to tell you about. So I will let you go. Like I said, if I see you on Saturday, it'll be wonderful. But if not, I will see you when I get back in 2 weeks. So take care, you guys. I love you bunches. I could not do this without you. I wouldn't want to do it without you. I'd be a weird lady just randomly reading on the internet. So you guys take care. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. I hope you get lots of wonderful things done, lots of sewing and relaxing and summer fun and all that. And I will see you when I get back. So, mwah, 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 mwah. Bye. Thanks, Druid.